Enjoy the podcast tonight. Enjoy the podcast tonight.
What is up? We are back. TCR Live. It's not Mock Draft Monday, but that intro was just so much fun. I couldn't resist. I need to ask my friend Doug if he'd be willing to maybe do a new one that isn't Mock Draft Monday. But I am joined by some of my favorite people. I'm joined by somewhere in the ether, Jackie, a disembodied voice of Jackie Samania has joined us. Jackie, how are you?
I'm doing great, Joe. How are you?
Yeah, I'm here, right? I'm ready for some football. Yeah. So I'm glad to be back. Glad to be with you guys. And of course, with a new and improved mic and backdrop, looking like the YouTuber he truly is, Mr. Aaron Van Buren. How are you, sir?
I'm great. It's been a long time. Especially, first year being, working at a high school, things just feel like it's so short, so fast, but then especially from like football season and where and everything went, but it's good to be back.
Yeah. So I took a couple of months off or a month and a half off, to kind of, work on some other things. The June and July are dead periods for football. So rather than, put together some videos that might get, 500 views or whatever, I decided to take some time off, and we're preparing for the new season. But, we're going to kind of start ramping up, getting some live streams going and get some other things going as we get, back into the preseason and training camp. And today we're going to talk about training camp. And of course, we're joined by the good folks of the chat. We have Classy Nasty. Thank you for being here. Cactus Desert Football. Coley Jack, howdy. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Red Sea, the one, the only. Almost that time. It is that time. We've got Chase Thompson, LFG, 100%. Teo Capero, thank you for being here. The time has come. It's time. Cruz Aspuro, thank you for being here. Here we go. Back to Constitution. Appreciate you. Longtime support of the channel. Let's get going, Bird Gang. Johannes, one of our good friends from Germany. Appreciate you being here. Good morning, legend. It's morning over there.
Sudir.
Yes, we have a very wonderful Seahawks fan who's always very kind. She's great. Alona Conforction. I apologize. I'm sure I butchered that name. Hello, Joe, coming from a Seattle Seahawks fan. I was born and raised from Seattle. Appreciate you. She is always so kind. She posts very nice comments. So I love having fans from all teams here, as long as they're cool, which she is. Appreciate that. Ben Cork, thank you for being here, hanging out. I believe, Ben, you're from Canada, right? I'm going to remember. I believe so. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but we, glad to have our Cardinals diaspora. All of our Cardinals fans hanging out with us from all around. So let's get into it. We are going to talk about a couple different things, and then we're going to focus most of our time on kind of, talking about some of the things we're looking at from training camp. First, real quick, there's a couple signings. They signed 5 players: long snapper Jack Coco, wide receiver Davian Davis, wide receiver Caden Davis, offensive line Pat Elfline, and tight end Jeff Swaim. And we're going to talk about 2 of these players. They also mentioned they placed long snapper Matt Hambro on the injured reserve release tight end Chris Pierce. So there's really 2 of these names I think are really worth talking about because they have some NFL experience. So we'll start with Pat Elfline. AVB, you are our resident offensive lineman. So I'd like you to get us started with what your thoughts are. He's primarily center, but he's played some guard. We've got his PFF grades up here. What are your thoughts on Elfline and kind of what you see his role being with the Cardinals?
So I like to pick up. I feel more confident, and maybe just because it's a somewhat recognizable name. I am familiar with him, playing in Minnesota, especially growing up in Wisconsin, and seeing, him play quite a bit, and also block for, I think that was the end of Adrian Peterson's time there. I can't remember. But he's still good at, Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison, so as on his PFF grades, I mean, he's a better run blocker, as you can see on the stats there. And also it shows up on the film, but I wouldn't worry about too much of a pass blocking, standpoint. The only person who I would even worry about is, of course, Aaron Donald, but you're going to get a double against him anyways in a pass blocking sense. So I think it's a solid pickup. I was looking at the depth chart and I'm like, I've seen this Froholt guy, but I have no idea how to say his first name.
Holte.
There it is.
Holte. Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't know anything about him or the other guy on the depth chart, which was John Gaines II. So overall, great signing, and hopefully we can have some shotgun snaps to go right to Murray's chest and not his toes.
That would be nice. Jackie, what are your thoughts on the Elfline signing?
Well, I'm not too familiar with him, to be honest with you. So I did a little research, and he was a run blocker for Tennessee, so he blocked for Derrick Henry. So that's a good sign there. But just given the fact that we're going to be pretty run heavy this season, we're going to need a run blocking tight end. I don't foresee him being in the pass game too much.
So you're talking about Jeff Swaim here, right?
Sorry, I am talking about Jeff Swaim.
That's right.
Nice segue.
Yes.
Yeah, no, perfect.
So Jackie,
segue.
tell us, what are your thoughts on Jeff Swaim?
So look, all that being said, plus I've heard that we are going to use 3 tight end sets, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, no, we're going to need some blockage for sure up front. So any kind of experience with the O-line just to build that up, perfect for me.
Yeah, I like both these signings as well. I think when you look at Elfline, he's his best season was his rookie season. He started over 1,000 snaps, primarily at center. They moved him to guard a little bit, and some of his seasons struggling were at guard. He still struggled a little bit at center points, but he's played better, I think, at center. He's a guy I think who's in the mix, right? He's competing with Froholt, right? But I don't know if he's going to start. Froholt might have the edge because he was with Petzing in Cleveland and knows the system, but having another veteran guy in the mix, right, is certainly nice. So I like the signing. He may, with these kinds of signings, they might not even make the 53-man roster. We just got to wait and see once we get through camp. But having a guy with some experience and over 4,000 snaps, right, and then Swaim. Like when I think about the tight end position, like the first 2 on the depth chart, we know who that's going to be, right? Ertz and McBride, and I think we feel pretty good about that depth chart. But your third tight end was really kind of a crapshoot, right? Sykovitz, has been on the international program, but I don't know that he's ready to play, right? If they can have him on the practice squad again with that exemption, I think they'll do it. And they have a guy they signed, I forget his name, but he was with Philadelphia, but he's kind of more of a special teams depth guy. And I think this signing of Swaim upgrades our number 3 tight end potentially if he makes the team, right?
You're talking about Noah Togiai.
Yes, that's the guy, right? Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I think this is it brings some, veteran depth, right? And guy who can, as Jackie pointed out, can run block, right? So yeah, overall, these are solid, but they're unspectacular, but solid depth signings to that I think are the kind of signings you want to see. So yeah, I'm with you guys. I think they're decent signings. Let's say hey to a couple of the other folks. Alex, thanks for being here. Good day. Appreciate you. Agent 47 starting the training camp without Kime and Cliff. This is A+ win already. We got Petrie Pack. Thanks for being here. Sup, Joe? And all good to see you back. Still wishing we would have drafted Tristan Wirfs today instead of Simmons. I would agree with that at this point. Could have traded DJ and had our tackles for the next 10 years protecting K1. Tree Pack agrees that it's a good, though, that we don't have Kime and Cliff. Particularly, I would say Kime most, but yeah. I feel bad for Cliff. I think he's a good guy. Maybe not. Maybe he was over his head, but the more, and we'll get to this in a minute, the more we see what's going on with Kime, and the more Cliff is kind of taking the high road. It seems like Cliff is showing himself to be a character guy from what we can see. We got Paul G. Appreciate you, Paul. Hi, everyone late to the game. Hi, Aaron, and of course, Joseph and Jackie, right? And the link to the show is up in their form, so thank you. So, all right. So with that, yes, here we go, Paul saying hi to you too, Jackie. So with that kind of said, as that segue, let's talk a little bit about what's Steve Kime's deal. And Mr. Van Buren, I believe you actually wrote an article about this on AZ Sports Underground, right?
That is correct. So it was an article basically just going over and reacting a little bit to what Kyle Odegaard had written about, Steve Keim's little chat with Colin Cowherd with, that 45-second rant, which just seemed to go on forever, like all Steve Keim, pressers do. But there was another part to Odegaard's article where he had talked to an anonymous Cardinals staff member back in December. And I was just like, well, maybe if I'm playing, conspiracy theorists here, maybe that was Terry McDonough who started all this, but who knows? And Steve Keim he's just like, Cardinals fans, they don't want to hear anything from a guy who is making $47 million a year. And the irony, which was so well pointed out by Odegaard, was that you're the guy who gave him the money and you got an extension with him. So like in a way, who you crapping, man? It doesn't make sense. It's like putting the cart before the horse. And you kind of went into this sort of like thing about talking about how Kyler used the word, if it doesn't work, or but, then we have to look in the mirror and accept that. And Keim's just like, I don't want to hear that. I mean, like, what do you want from a leader? If it's not working, you have to address stuff. I mean, introspection is one of the greatest tools anybody can have, especially when you acted one way and later on down the road, you may realize you're wrong. Okay. Yeah. But that's how people learn. And I don't think Steve Keim has learned anything probably since 2015 because it didn't influence the record or how he did or how he drafted at all. That's for sure. So as you know, Steve Keim's still stuck up with Kyler Murray. I think someone I think it was Kyler, or not Kyler Murray, but our Kyler Bird. He tweeted out like this picture of Murray with photo shoots with Hollywood Brown. Be like, look at just Murray's expression in general. And someone else retweeted that being like, because Keim is gone for the first time ever, and to quote National Treasure, maybe he was like a Johnny Raincloud, if you get that reference, over the organization. And I would have to agree. Kyler seems a lot more relaxed, more open, and I did watch that Flight Plan episode, and you could see how hard he's working, and that's the quarterback the Cardinals have always wanted. So hopefully he rehabs and goes from there, and Steve Keim can also tell us about what he did wrong, and then we can actually move past this.
Yeah, Jackie, what do you think is Steve Keim's deal?
He is on a tirade of podcasts and interviews, just sounding like a really bitter ex-employee. Zero accountability, not even for the whole Kyler era, but just accountability for his whole tenure as a general manager. He never put together a winning team. He just I'm trying to think of a good analogy here that doesn't involve me cursing. So I'm just going to say, he treated the team like he put lipstick on a pig, Right. Let's just sign this old.
I had used that one in the previous live stream too.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, sorry, Joe. I was going to say it's like putting shit on glitter or glitter on shit.
Yeah. No, that's pretty accurate and appropriate. Yeah.
But that's just what he did, was just he would bring in some flashy vet that is on his way out, give him a lot of money just to kind of keep fans happy, and it fed us for so long until it couldn't. But yeah, just zero lack of awareness on his part, and then just to kind of get defensive on what Murray said about if it's not working, then we need to look in the mirror. I don't think that's a direct hit. That's a pretty broad statement that he can make about himself, about Cliff, about anybody at this point. So for him to just kind of take that and then just run with it and just go on these, well, I don't want to hear this guy making all this money that I paid him, it's just silly, and it just lack of awareness, lack of accountability. He never put Murray in a position to win anyways. So for him to bash him, this is completely stupid to me. And it just really shows your true colors at this point. I don't think he'll ever have another general manager's position. I think teams can look at that and say, okay, well, this guy's a mess. And we haven't heard anything from Cliff either. So
Yeah, again, I think Cliff is coming out of this like the guy who I think maybe almost like a sympathetic figure. Like I think it was the right to move on.
He tried.
I think he needs some time as an offensive coordinator in the NFL. But he seems like a solid stand-up guy. He's not out chirping, saying stuff, Cliff Kingsbury, but Steve Keim, on the other hand, yeah, Aaron, you wanted to jump back in?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, the amount that he's talking, it kind of reminds me of two people. One is post-Packers era Greg Jennings going to the Vikings and talking about the Packers and Brett Favre. Secondly, and probably more relatable to the Cardinals fans, is he's giving Patrick Peterson a run for his money and how many comments he's making.
Yeah, no, he absolutely is. And what's funny is he's the guy that Patrick Peterson had the most kind of,
Patrick had a lot of solid points, but some of them were kind of like,
yeah. So I think a couple things, and I think Pete Trevek here says it, I think, very well. Steve Keim was a great salesman, but he always thought he was the smartest person in the room. Spoiler, he was not. Like Steve Keim has that kind of schmoozy kind of personality, right? He's a good communicator. He's a good speaker. He kind of, gives, a little bit of humor, a little bit of, I'm sorry.
He reminds me of a used car salesman,
right?
Like a sweaty used car salesman,
right.
Like slaps a car, like, oh, this baby's in great shape as the bumper's falling off.
Yeah.
Would you look at that?
Yeah. So I think there's some issues here. But I also think, I do think he's kind of, he's trying to be relevant. I think someone, Paul said that she's trying to be relevant when he's not.
Ooh,
he's
look at
trying
that
to
tree pack comment.
Let's see.
The latest one down below. That's great.
Okay, let's take a look. That's how Keim was so great in trades. He was a great salesman, but couldn't draft for a lick, and he tried to patch that over with good trades. So glad he's not. Yeah, I agree. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing he was good at is trades. Not just everyone talks about the Hopkins trade, but like he's made other good trades. So absolutely. So one other thing I wanted to mention with him, it seems like the whispers from the building have kind of slowed down or stopped, right?
Or the narratives and the rumors.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Personality.
I don't know if it was him, but
the tone has shifted in a big way. The media attention's now towards, I think Kyle Odegaard put out something. He took some kids shopping today, and you can see too, like Kyler seems a lot happier.
Yeah, 100%. So I think he's doing, he's just trying to save face. I think kind of, make himself kind of not look as bad as he actually does. And I think he's also just trying to kind of get into the podcasting announcing game. I think you're right. I think he knows he's not going to get another GM job. So he's trying to transition to something else. And to be honest, like he'd be good at it. Like he's a good communicator. He'd be good at announcing or podcasting, but we don't want to hear what he has to say. Let's just say we're done with that. Right. So I don't want to spend all of our time on Keim, but yeah, as we know, there's a lot of kind of sour grapes and stuff going on there. But let's talk about another kind of topic. What do you expect from Budda Baker in terms of, he's reported to camp, but we all know he asked for a contract extension. When he didn't get that, he asked to be traded. He didn't get that. He wants to be paid at the top of the, safety market. So, what do you guys think? Expect from Budda Baker? We'll have Jackie. Why don't you get us started? What do you think we're going to see from him in training camp in the preseason?
It's tough to gauge because he's been, what I feel, very selfless in his whole career as a Cardinal, and he doesn't strike me as a big, I'm going to hold out guy. So it's going to be really interesting because he could show up, but is he actually going to practice is my concern. Mm-hmm. I think that given that we were in the in-season Hard Knocks and everybody got to see how hard he works, how dedicated he is, the fact that I think throughout the whole disaster of that season that he was the most consistent first guy in, last guy out, gave everything to a losing team. So you'd think, like, as an outsider looking in, you have to pay that man. You know, he's the anchor of your defense. That's almost a face of a franchise at this point. But then you look at it as a Cardinals fan, and it's like, well, do you want to just give in to a guy that wants a trade like that? I would say at this point, you know, we're not paying Hopkins anymore. Murray got paid. So if anybody deserves top dollar on that team, it's got to be Buddha for sure.
Yeah. Aaron, what do you think we're going to see from Buddha? Do you think we're going to see him practicing? Do you think we're going to see a hold-in? What do you think?
Well, judging by the tweet he put out either today or yesterday, he said, I'm pretty sure went something along the lines of, I don't know what you bleeping expected, but here I am, go Cards. So I guess he's going to play, but I would still trade him.
Okay.
The bridge has been burned. I know he's a fan favorite, and I know this is going to get the chat riled up, but all you Thompson stands, okay, it's time to see what he's made of. So put him out there, let him be the starter, okay, and then let's see what he does. But I think there's no use in keeping players here hostage that don't want to be here or have had a desire to get out. And, you know, I guess in life, you got to do some stuff that you don't want to do, no matter how much it just eats away at the inner part of your soul sometimes. So I would trade him. I would let somebody else take the contract. I love Buddha for what he's done for the team. And I just think that the direction this is going, you have a great first round setup along with a bunch of draft picks next year. Free up even more of the salary cap, see what free agents come out because of it. And maybe because of your first round, if you do it right, like you did it again this year, Monty Ossenfort, that might be able to swing some later free agents next year to come back to us, because there's still a genuine, or not genuine, but a decent amount of decent older NFL players who may just want to sign somewhere, and you never know what can happen when you get the right veterans in with the younger rookies. So I would trade them.
Okay. Well, I mean, surprisingly, I'm a little surprised that the response isn't like people like totally torching you. I mean, Agent 47 says if we get a great package, I'll be okay. Paul says Buddha's not the best tackle. You can get run over. The AZ Cardinals forms 100%.
Still better than Deion Buchanan.
Yeah, right. So, you know, I think but I also agree. I don't think he wants out. I think he wants to get paid, right? And I think if he gets paid, I think he will be all in. I just think he's that kind of guy, character wise, you know. So I would like to sign him to an extension. I know that I understand that it might not be the most from a pure value roster building perspective. Signing a safety to big money that age isn't always the best thing to do. So I totally get that. Maybe this is just my heart, but man, that guy, what he brings to in terms of example and character, to me is worth overpaying a bit. If you're going to do that, if you're going to overpay that guy. But if you're not, I think I don't know that you're going to get a ton in trade for him. He's a great player, but we see how sometimes players, don't with big contracts, you don't get as much as you would think. So I just have to wonder if he will play under his current contract. If you can get him to play under your contract, you at least keep him through this contract. And if he won't re-sign and he goes somewhere else, you get a compensatory pick. When that happens, you live with that, right? Chris Smith, says you're crazy. You can't trade the heart and soul of the defense. I lean in that way too. Red Cisa says sign Buddha. He's your franchise at this point. Only player in defense the NFL teams actually fear, no brainer. Let me also say real quick, we got a couple other folks who have jumped in. Moore's legacy, keep Hollywood or no. That's an interesting one. That's going to be a tough one. We might talk about that a little bit down the road, a little bit more. Hank Hill, let's go. It's good to see you live stream again. I miss the mock draft streams. Me too. That is one of my favorite things, Mock Draft Monday. Love that so much. We'll do that every year. So, yeah, I think in terms of whether he's going to hold in, because I'm torn on what I think. Because you mentioned his tweet. What did y'all think? What do y'all expect? Like, is he talking to the fans, like, hey, or the media, like, what did you expect? Of course I'm going to show up. This is who I am, right? Or is he saying something a little bit different? Like, what do you expect? I'm here, but I'm not going to, I mean, I think there's like kind of holding in is the new thing, right? That for the last couple of years, players do that instead of holding out. They show up, so they're not fined, but they don't practice. They have, they take maybe a very minor injury and they just sit out with it, right? One that you would normally practice through. So, but I also see him as a kind of guy who maybe is just his drive and his character and who he is. He might not do that. Like, just wouldn't I think maybe there's a chance maybe his personality just wouldn't let him do that. So what do you think what percent chance do you think there is, Jackie, that he holds in and doesn't practice at least for a while?
I'm going to say it's like 30% because I feel like he's a grinder. He wants to be out there and work. And plus, it probably looks a little better that you're practicing to a potential trade partner too. So there's that.
Aaron, what do you think? What percent chance do you think that he holds in?
35.
Okay. Got to up it just a little bit. Okay. Should I go 40 just to no? I'm with you guys. So I'm roughly in that range, right? Somewhere in that 30 to 40%. I think I lean more towards thinking he won't, but I think there's a chance he will, right? So it's hard to say. We'll have to watch it play out, right? So, what I want to do now though is I'm going to say hey to some of the folks that jumped in, but we're also going to jump to what we want to spend kind of the rest of our time talking about is which training camp stories do you keep an eye on? Because training camp is starting. There's a lot of interesting things, right? I know this is going to be a down year. We all expect it, but I'm excited because I want to see kind of which players kind of earn starting jobs and which young players step up. So I'm really excited about that. A couple folks jumped in, or we got Jordan P. And we're back. Thanks for being here with us, Jordan P. So let's, Jackie, why don't you get us started? What's the first sort of training camp story that you are keeping your eye on this year?
Keeping an eye on that O-line because we just got a shiny, brand new, highly touted offensive lineman in this draft. This is probably the first time, maybe ever, I've ever been excited for an offensive lineman. Plus, we've got some other guys that have been noted as guys that can be a little versatile, that could play guard in a pinch, play center in a pinch. So let's see where all that goes because we're going to need that offensive line to protect that quarterback that Keim gave all that money to. And it's going to be a little bit of a younger group for sure. So I'm curious to see where this goes this year, who's going to step up. And, the offensive line has plagued us for a long time. So maybe this will finally be the year that we've got that great line that, running backs can, that can block for our running backs, block for our quarterback that might be under center. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, Pete Trupac also says who will play left guard, hoping it's Paris Johnson Jr. And, on my list, I certainly had where are they going to play Paris Johnson Jr. That's, are they going to play him at right tackle? Will Beacham not be starting, even though they did sign him, bring him back? They could, it's absolutely possible. Or will he play at left guard, which I think is probably more likely. And then you mentioned in general the offensive line, right? I think center, right? That's the big question too. Right? Is it going to be Furhold or Elfline or someone else? I don't know. I would think, to me, Furhold still has kind of the edge. But Aaron, what's something that you were keeping an eye
on? Can I just piggyback off of that?
Yeah.
The other thing that I didn't have written down, but Jack, you sparked my thought about it, was what is the pass distribution between Colt McCoy? Like, what is he running on these dropbacks when he passes? Is it a 3-step drop? Are we doing 5, 7 play action rollouts? How are we, how is the protection looking from if we're running out of a 3 tight end set? Are we going max protect, or are we having, whatever combination? What are the running backs doing as a result? The tight ends are going to really show us what's coming for Murray. I would say about 60% of it, because you still know Murray will probably try to use his legs, not as much, because, going back to last year, he wants them to be a luxury, especially after the injury. But just seeing how that would change the blocking schemes and everything else that, is down the river from that was something to watch as well. As for something I'm looking into is actually at the cornerback position, because and once again, this is the off season, it's speculation season. Well, not technically training camp, but it's basically off season until you actually start playing games. But Antonio Hamilton is actually listed as, I believe, third on the depth chart, according to, or second behind Rashad Fenton, who came over from Atlanta, but he also spent time with the Chiefs. And it's interesting to see Fenton, it's I guess my Midwest, you say you tease like these up here. Fenton has only been in the league since 2019, and he's starting over Antonio Hamilton, according to ESPN. Now, obviously, depth chart, ESPN quality, take it for what you will. And Hamilton had his best year so far last year since he's been with us. But for a free agent who's basically half of his career younger than him to come in and just usurp him on the depth chart, I'm wondering what's going to happen to him, because the cornerback spot is almost a revolving door and anyone could really just jump up and take it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Cornerback is like the first thing on my list. Like, my notes is like, and Alex here says, I have faith in Marco Wilson. Marco Wilson showed some nice things, but I don't know, with the new coaching scheme, our new defensive scheme, coaching staff, I don't know how they're going to view him. Right. But he, I did a video about him last season, and he was really having a nice second half of the season. It's like, for me, like, is Marco Wilson number one? Like, if you go based on the last couple of years, there's an argument that it's either Marco Wilson or Antonio Hamilton. Those are kind of the two best cornerbacks remaining on the roster, at least who were with us. But will Christian Matthews step into a significant role, or is he going to even make the team? You just never know when, he's got good size and length. When will Garrett Williams be ready to play? Excited to see him whenever he plays. He might be the best cornerback they have on the roster, at least eventually, like 2 years from now, he might be the best. We'll see. Keitrell Clark, loved that draft pick, right? And he's a feisty guy who could probably play in this. I think most people think he's going to play in the slot. I've heard some people say they think, he'll play outside, but I love Keitrell Clark. And then, Fenton, there's a guy who started his career well, but kind of really dropped off, right? And then Chris Boyd, is he going to play? That's the guy they brought in. I don't think all those guys can make the roster, right? You usually expect no more, like 4 to 5 cornerbacks is usually what you see on an NFL roster. Rarely is it more than 5. You'll see it once in a while, right? So you got Wilson, Hamilton, Matthew, Garrett Williams. Maybe, if he's not healthy, maybe he starts on the pup list, right? Keitrell Clark, Fenton, Boyd, those guys are not all going to be on the starting 53, right? Not all of them are going to be there. So who's the odd man out, right? So to me, cornerback is a big question. So I'm with you. Did either of you want to add to anything on the cornerback conversation?
Well, at that point, I feel like since we brought up Marco Wilson, I think at this point it's his job to lose to be cornerback one. So kind of like the feet to the fire. You had a really good second half of the season. Now you have to be the guy. Right.
I was just going to say it's probably going to be like 2020 again. And before you know it, someone like the abominable Curtis Riley is going to show up. You have no idea who he is. He'll be signed like 30 seconds before a game and be out there playing.
Oh, God. I hope not. Yeah. And then Jordan P says, how about who will start linebacker next to Kaiser and Simmons to DB and Zaven to edge, right? And that to me is there's like one of my questions I had is Zaven really going to be a full-time edge rusher, or are they going to play him because with their defense, your outside linebackers sometimes rush and sometimes don't, the way they move things around. So and they're not going to have 2 inside linebackers on the field all the time, right? Because you play a lot of nickel, but they will sometimes. And when they do, are they going to move, Zaven back to, are they going to play him at middle linebacker when they're in that, in a set where they have 2 inside linebackers, when they have that kind of front, and then move him to edge? Or are they going to have him at edge full time? And then obviously, you would expect Kaiser's going to start, but, is it going to be Chris Barnes or Josh Woods or, I don't think Papo, as much as people are talking about his speed, he's too raw. I don't think he'd be ready. So, I don't know, right? So that's going to be a really tricky one. So,
well, I just want to build off of that, because how can someone and I haven't seen Zaven Collins since the last game, so maybe put on some weight or muscle or something. I can't see him as a DN. If I'm a left tackle, or if I'm a tackle in the general, and I see this guy lining up across from me, I know I have a pancake. I'm telling my guard, hey, you go help the center, you go second level or tight end, just chip him, go get corner. We got a sweep, we get the edge, we're gone on this guy.
Yeah.
I would have rather had used Zaven in some sort of like a monster role. There's probably many different terms for like a defense that moves all around before the snap of a ball. I learned it as like an amoeba defense. It's always moving. I thought like when he got into, of course it was a preseason game, but when he got in the A gap, shot it and got the tackle against the Cowboys in the preseason that one year or last year, whenever it was, I thought, hey, if that's where he can use his speed and leverage, great. But I think right now you have super athletic DNs, which I think Zaven's a little light for it, and left tackles that can kick set till the cows come home. Like they're able to move and redirect. And I don't know if Zaven has enough tools in his arsenal to get around the edge to the blind side. So, and I don't know how he can be ahead of Myjai Sanders. Like that's just, I would have them flipped and have him playing more linebacker first, then D end.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of the Eagles defense from last year, just kind of get a sense of what they did. And, they did something that a lot of teams do. I mean, everyone talks about them as a 4-3 defense, but they actually had on especially on running downs, I saw a lot of 3-4. They had a nose tackle, a couple 3 techniques, and then they had their edge rusher, outside linebacker edge rushers, right? And then they would switch it up, right? On passing downs, they would go to more of like a 4-2-5, right? They had the 2 defensive tackles inside, a couple defensive ends, and then the inside linebackers, right, as corners and safeties and such. And, I know Jordan P was saying that he's full-time with the edge, and I had heard that. But I still wonder, even though he's practicing full-time with the edge, I just wonder if the way they do that, there's still sort of a hybrid role where maybe on those 3-4 sets, he'll be that edge. But when they move to those 4-2 sets, he might be more of an outside linebacker that sometimes rushes, but also, he knows how to play Mike and inside linebacker. So maybe they've got him full time with the edges so he can get all the work in on that. So
basically we're running a pseudo Tampa 2.
Maybe, if you watch one of Brett Coleman's videos he did a while back, everyone's running some version of that to some degree, right?
Yeah, that's true. I did watch that.
Yeah. So interesting. Real quick, I want to say hey to Robert Moore, one of our AZ Sports Underground folks. Thanks for being here. Good evening, Jets. This will be a development season for the team. Lots of experiments with players to see what works and doesn't work. I agree. Just hoping rookies and previous get a lot of snaps. I completely agree. So, one of the other questions, and I think I believe it was Paul, mentioned training camp, Simmons to safety. That is my story. So kind of what I had in my notes is how are they going to deploy their 3 safeties, right? Simmons, Baker, and Thompson. I mean, they play, they're going to play a lot of quarters and they'll play some 3 deep, they'll play stuff like that. So there's room for that. I mean, I think Simmons is, they're going to be all 4 or all 3 of them probably playing there. So, maybe Simmons, they move him around. Might be more, when PFF ends up charting his plays, he still might end up being a slot corner based on where they put him. But, that's just, and I did a little bit of kind of stuff with PFF once before. And though they just based on where they are positioned on the field. Right. So, but anyway, so I think that's going to be interesting how they, what happens with Simmons and how they use him. I worry about his future, right? Where's, Cowdog saying where's Simmons going to play at safety, right?
ESPN has him listed as a cornerback.
Well, yeah, and that's because, and that's where he took most of his slot or his snaps or majority of his snaps at slot corner last year. So, You know, and I think it'll be interesting to see, but I do think they're going to be playing a lot of quarters 4 deep. So I think he'll end up just being one of those guys. But yeah, that's kind of a story for me. Jackie, what's your next story that you're looking at?
Well, I've already crossing. I had Simmons and Collins with their position groups changing. That was something I was going to look out for because we didn't pick up Isaiah Simmons' 5th-year option. So part of me feels like he's with, them moving him around that, he might have a monster year. And then we're going to be in the position next year. It's like, okay, well, we haven't seen a lot of consistency out of this guy. He's very raw, has raw athleticism, but it
Transition tag.
There you go. So that was my thing. And Collins has shown some steady growth as an inside linebacker. Now we're switching that up. So we'll see. Like Aaron was saying, I do feel he is kind of small at where they're playing him now.
Yeah.
So hopefully that doesn't kind of stunt his growth with the team. So with that all being said, let's see what else do I have here. I'm just really curious with this offense overall. This is going to be not a Cliff Kingsbury offense. We finally got an offensive coordinator that might actually be competent at the NFL level. So we'll see. We've heard that it's going to be pretty run heavy. There's going to be some quarterbacks taking snaps under center, but it's real interesting given the fact that our star quarterback might not start the season. So we're going to have Colt McCoy and possibly Clayton Tune running with this new offense. But then how is this going to translate to Murray's game?
Yeah, and who's going to be starting? I think it's most likely Colt McCoy early on. But yeah, there's definitely some questions there. Aaron, what's your next question that you're watching in training camp?
So, and it could just be how they made up the list, but Jesse Luketa, obviously they brought over Kaiser White, and did I just lose stream here? Hello?
No, I'm still here.
I guess.
Okay, cool. I thought I saw the thing go off, so I didn't know. But Kaiser White came over, and then they drafted BJ Ojolari. And then on top of that, you got Chris Bynes, one of those two. I can't remember his last name, who came from the Packers. So just seeing how he can actually have a chance to, get some playing time and, and actually develop, as I can't remember who said it in the comments, but actually seeing some rookies play would be nice. And especially in the year we're going to suck. Just play them anyways. Don't Vance Joseph them, please. Don't let them play. Okay. Because I just see Luketa, we brought in people on top of it. Now there's extra pressure for him to perform and try to stay on the roster, for a handful of years, just like Rashard Lawrence has done. He's survived a handful of free agents being brought in. That was my second spot.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk a little bit to kind of build on that. How is that front seven, the defensive line in particular? How's that rotation going to shape up? I've started doing a little bit of kind of looking at that a little bit in terms of looking at who the Eagles started in different spots, like kind of interior defensive line, on the edge, linebackers, and looking at their players and kind of the players they had there, and which Cardinals players kind of not are, the Cardinals don't have as good of players as the Eagles, obviously, on that defensive line, but which players, in terms of the type of player they are, fit those different roles that the Eagles had, and, who's going to be playing. And I think that rotation is going to be interesting to see, for sure. But one of the things I want to mention, and this is something someone mentioned earlier, is how are the receiving corps going to kind of line up? And, a couple of people mentioned, or German P, keep an eye on Michael Wilson and the role he can potentially warrant with a great camp and no D Hopkins. I also like to take who will take over the running back 2 spot. Agent 47, Michael Wilson is a player I want to see. I'm for me, it's like I'm really excited about the potential of Michael Wilson, right? He could be that X receiver that, take it Hopkins spot. He, like, in terms of his physical skill set, he has that. Now, I don't know that he will right away, right? But I'm really, if he can stay healthy is the question with him. But, I did a video about him and his separation, his route running, his size, and he's not a burner, but he's not slow either. So, does he kind of earn some snaps quickly, right? And then, where do they play Rondale Moore? Do they play him in the slot, or do they, which they probably will, but maybe they don't. Maybe they go on the outside with speed with him more. So, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the receiving core. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
It's going to be hard for that to happen if they're running 3 tight end sets. If you're running a 3 tight end set and you got at least one running back out there, you can only have one receiver on the field. So it's going to be Hollywood Brown, or is it going to be, Wilson? That's really, what situation is going to dictate who gets in those situations. So I would almost, with the offense we're going to have, I would temper yardage predictions for any of our wide receivers.
Yeah. Jackie, what are your thoughts on the receivers?
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be a down year for, receivers. Is, not a lot of production there. And like I said, we're not going to know who's the quarterback. There's going to be some rotation within that as well. And then who knows, Rondale Moore can't stay healthy. Hollywood Brown is now in a wide receiver 1 position, which he was okay in Baltimore, but, didn't thrive like everyone had hoped.
Running offense.
Yeah. Greg Dortch is still there. And then, we've got Antoine Wesley still here.
Oh, maybe. I forget about him.
They had him in for a workout. I haven't heard that they signed him back, but.
And then, Michael Wilson, this has potential steal written all over him, but who knows if he'll actually get to display that.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know why they would even have let him go. Those two, I actually really liked so much last year. It's surprising to actually hear that again. And
then Janice saying, I honestly think Zach Pascal could have a bigger impact than people think. He's a big guy who can block well, can be really good fit. And listen, he's a guy they brought in, because, they had experience with him, with the Eagles. And, he's a guy who's been a solid depth receiver. He's never been a number 1 or really even a number 2 necessarily, or at least he's a very low end number 2 if he's that historically. He's a guy who, if he has a good season, gets you 500 yards, which is, nothing to sneeze at. And he's, is kind of a culture guy, good blocker. So, I think they'll be using him more than we think, probably, right? For sure. But there's definitely a lot of questions. Real quick, I want to say hey to a couple of folks that have jumped in here. Jose, thanks for being here, hanging out with us. And then Eric Ramos, thanks for being here. I want to do, and we're going to kind of do this as we head out. I want to do one more thing, and that is we're going to have maybe just some bold predictions for training camp. Okay. So, or the leading into the preseason, like whether it's someone you think is going to earn a starting job, someone you think is going to get cut, or something. And folks in the chat, give us your best bold prediction for something you think between now and the start of the season. We won't go season long bold predictions, but bold prediction, something you think could happen or has a chance to happen between now and the season. Aaron, since it was kind of your idea, I'm going to let you get us started with a bold prediction.
I am going to predict that there's a trade and that Budda Baker gets traded to someone in the AFC South.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Whether that's the Jaguars, I mean, they have Rayshon Jenkins and Andre Sisco, who's kind of been under fire, but you could also look at the Texans. I know we just took the 1st round pick, but the Texans traded released Justin Reed, traded him to the Chiefs. So they're missing back there. And I know the Texans got a lot of cap space coming up, and they're a team with D'Amico Ryans and I think a new GM, I can't remember, that they'd be willing to throw whatever Christian Kirk money at him. So there's your bold prediction.
Okay, that's good. Jackie, do you have a bold prediction? I'm putting you on the spot here. So, but
Yes, so I'm gonna actually say that Clayton Tune beats out Colt McCoy and will start the season for us.
Oh, okay.
I
mean,
like that.
The new regime doesn't really owe Colt McCoy much loyalty. I know that doesn't play a factor in the whole thing, but you draft a quarterback that everyone has been very high on. New season, new offense, new everything. Let's give this guy a shot and see what we have here.
If they didn't, would it be Tune Deaf?
Yes.
Ooh,
I like it.
okay. So, I don't know if this is. I know I said not something that's for the season, so I'm trying to think how to frame this so it's not like I'm looking into the season, but like, mine is that Keontae Ingram is actually going to be a bigger part of this offense than people think. In fact, my bold prediction, if I were going to the season, is that he has more yards than Connor.
I mean, I could see that. I think
he's a better fit for this. But I say going into the season that it's like a running back by committee, and he's like a 40% carry share. That's my bold prediction.
Fantasy hot take. You heard it here first.
Yeah. Now we'll see if it comes back to bite me. But let's see some of them that we had in the chat. There was some different. So Rob Moore, tight end, McBride, tight end 1. I think that's a good potential. Like especially if Ertz doesn't come back fully, if he needs some more time, right? This is an interesting. John Gaines wins the starting center job. I mean, listen, he was a guard coming out of college, but a lot of people think that they drafted him to be a center, which that could be interesting, right? Paris Johnson Jr. at right tackle, Beacham on the bench. I like that. Eric Ramos, I like this one. K1 comes back strong. Bold prediction.
Week 1 start.
Yeah. Dakota Bedard going really bold. My bold, we might go wild card and loss. Boy, that's more bold than I'm willing to go playoffs. But
whatever liquid you're having, let me know.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen. So
I respect it.
Yeah, right. Respectfully speaking. So listen, training camps, getting started. Like I said at the beginning or earlier, we all know this is a first year of a rebuild, and our expectations are tempered. I think we're for the most part all realists here. We understand that this is, kind of a time to set the foundation for the future. Let young players play. They're going to make mistakes. It's going to be sloppy, but the idea is next year, those players, have a season under their belt. Right. And we can build on it. Right. But although it's going to be a rough year, I'm excited to see, what does Cameron Thomas and Myjai Sanders, do this year. Right. Do they become really good players for us? Does Michael Wilson have an outstanding rookie year? On a roster like this with so many questions and holes and young players, someone is going to surprise us, right? Someone's going to become a player. You know what I'm saying? Like someone we didn't think of is going to show us something. So that is, and it's exciting to see that. It's when you don't have winning to look forward to, you can look forward to seeing who are going to show themselves to be pieces we can use and build around in the future. And I'm excited about that. So we're going to kind of work our way out of here, try to get out of here within an hour in our first kind of live stream back going into the season. So we're going to go around the horn and just let each of you give any closing thoughts and let folks know where to find you on social media and your other, content that you create. Jackie, get us started. Where can folks find you? What kind of content do you create? Where can they find that? And any other closing thoughts you want to make about the Cardinals?
Well, now that I am back in Phoenix, Arizona, I will try to make it out to some open practices to see, boots on the ground, what we've got going on here. But you can find me on Twitter at jsandiego. That is with 2 O's. A writer and contributor to AZ Sports Underground and the co-host of the Redbird Red Zone podcast. We will be back soon to talk more, drink more, be more raunchy. So definitely check us out once the season gets rolling.
Awesome. Mr. Aaron Van Buren, where can folks find you?
Just like Jackie, I'm on AZ Sports Underground. I am not writing as much as I have as when I was on Fansided with the 3 different sites that I was. Being full-time teacher and strength coach is obviously my first job, but I still like to contribute. Joe is basically Cardinals YouTube. That I will fully back up that statement against anybody else 110%. And so you can find me on Twitter at _AVB Sports. And in terms of, just closing thoughts here, go back to, the second last article I had just written about when Carson Palmer, talked about how they turned it around from 2012 and, kickstarted it going into, those 3 years, 13 to 15. Now we don't have a Bruce Arians at the helm and we don't have Larry Fitzgerald, and, it's different, but in essence, we all need to have that just slow cooker optimism here that, each week when we have to go back and taste, what's cooking, it ain't going to be very good, but later on it's going to be sweet. It's going to be good. Hopefully, we're going to actually see rookies play. No Vance Joseph crap anymore. We're going to see if these coaches can actually develop someone for once. So it's going to be a long 17 games. I even know some people are going around saying that we're going to be the first 0-17 team, but I highly doubt that's going to happen. Because these guys won't let it happen. So have the faith, but just be realistic in your expectations, and we'll see where we're at come February, and then mock draft Monday season later on.
Robert Moore says, preach on AVB. Yeah, listen, we're building for the long foundation, right? You're building for foundation for the future, for the long run. Those draft picks that Monty got for us next year, I mean, he's got us a haul. He did a good job this draft. I think most people have kind of lauded their draft as being very good, and then all those picks added. So they're building something. If you, with those kinds of draft picks, if you have even a league average scouting department and ability to find find players, if you're even average, which we have not been, right, under Steve Keim, but if he can bring us back to average, and we have all those draft picks we have, you're going to build a solid team. And I believe he can be better than average. I think the Patriots, we saw, especially finding offensive linemen and defensive players. So I'm excited about Monty, what he's doing for this organization, right? With Boston Fort at the helm, there's reason to be excited for the future of the Cardinals. I agree. So absolutely. So you all hopefully know where to find me, on the Cardinal Rule on YouTube. If you aren't subscribed, please do. You can find me on Twitter at JOKOMO13. And I'm also on Threads, or at least I have an account. I'm not doing anything yet. I'm waiting for the desktop app, but I am on Threads. So, if Elon continues to destroy Twitter, or X as he wants to call it, but I call it Twitter, you'll find me on Threads. But
it still says every tweet.
Right, exactly. I'm glad to be back. We'll start doing some regular live streams coming out. I don't know if I'm going to do one next week. There's some stuff going on, but we'll be getting up and going again on a regular basis, doing weekly live streams and things like that. So watch for more to come. Glad to be back. So as we always do, I'm going to put up the channel member shout outs, and we'll play that theme song on the way out. Thank you all for being here. Peace.
Get active in the Discord.
Yes, Discord, link below.
Hey, yo, it's Joe. He's the host of Mock